My stocking has dried. It's all felted and you can see it's really nice and stiff. It hangs up and keeps that really beautiful stocking shape. It's a little bit more durable. And now I'm going to work the embroidery name. So to begin, you need a Christmas stocking. This is the Christmas stocking from my knit Christmas stocking pattern. It's a classic, very simple, free stocking knitting pattern available on my website, originallylovely.com, and it is knit using Originally Lovely Lana yarn. This is a Highland wool yarn. This is perfect. You want to use a wool for this stocking because it felts it just so gently so that it can hang and keep its beautiful, nice stocking shape without warping or looking lumpy or just hanging flat. This will keep its shape and stay beautiful for years to come. So to embroider the name, I'm going to be using Originally Lovely Pima yarn. You can use any scrap yarn for this, any yarn. I like Pima because you can see it has a very beautiful bright red color, and I think this will pop really nicely against the stocking. It also has super beautiful stitch definition, which I think is important because that's how we get those little V, like the slip stitch look. So the way that I'm going to embroider the name on here is with a chain embroidery stitch. It's a lot easier than you'd think. I've worked this style a lot of different ways. I've used a crochet hook to actually work a chain stitch on the surface. I liked that way, but it took a long time and it was hard to get it exactly the way I wanted. I've also used a chain stitch, which is essentially where you work a chain stitch with a crochet hook and then you sew that on using a needle and thread. I don't like that way as much either because to get the V's of the chain to really look, always stay the same orientation, I think that you need to use a needle. Another reason is if you do the chain stitch way, you always have to just use one strand or it gets kind of complicated. So with certain letters, like a D, for example, when you have to go up and then down, that's a lot of material right there, that D. So you can use it that way. It kind of depends on the name, the letters you're going to use, and just the look you like. Like I said, this is the way that I like the best, and this is the way that I'm going to show you in this tutorial. I've done it all ways, and I find this to be the fastest and give you the best look, the easiest way, and the fastest. You need a tapestry needle, any size, it doesn't really matter, and scrap yarn in a color of your choice. You need a decent amount, not a lot, but definitely a few yards. You can't just use a tiny little bit of scrap yarn. So again, this is Originally Lovely Pima. You need an embroidery, tapestry needle, and then scissors, of course. So that's what we will be using, and let's get started. So now I zoomed in so you can see a bit more. There is kind of some fuzz there because I was working it and then I took it out. My lighting was kind of bad. So I want you to definitely be able to see it well. So thread your needle and leave a decently long tail. This is most of the yarn that's going to be used for your stocking. You can get new, but just leave a long enough tail to work with, but not so long that it gets obnoxious and tangly. So to begin, we're just going to insert our needle from the back to the front into about where you want to go. So right there. So that's where I'm going to start. I always start on one end and go over. I'm going to write out Freddie. I'm going to do all lowercase letters and all cursive. So I always start on one end and go over. Some people I know like to start in the middle. So let's say you're making mom, like M-O-M. You can start in the middle with the O so that you know it's centered. But I like to start on one end just so that I feel like these letters I have a hard time making look as good as the ending letters if I don't start at the beginning. So where you want to start, pull through just back to front and leave a little bit of a tail. We'll tie this off at the end. And then we're going to go back in right there into that same hole we came out of and leave a loop. Don't pull this all the way through. Just leave a little bit of a loop right there. So like I said before, I've worked a lot of different styles of these, and this is the way that I think looks the best and is actually the easiest. So if you have done a different way, that's totally fine. This is my favorite way to do it. But everyone kind of has their own preferences. So then once you have that little loop, you're going to insert your needle again from the back to the front, and you're actually going to go through that loop that you left on, and then pull it just slightly taut, not tight, just taut, so that you like the way that stitch looks. And then keep going just like that. That's the repeat. So now back into that same hole we came out of, right there, and pull it through, but leave a loop. Just like so. And then from back to front again to make our next stitch, and pull through, insert through that loop right there, and pull it through, pull it taut once more, kind of make sure you like the way it looks, and then again through that same hole, leaving a loop. Don't ever pull it all the way through. That can be kind of hard to remember as you get started. Back to front again, into the next loop, and then pull taut. And now, so I'm going to start going up a little bit to shape that F. So into the same hole. And then into the next, go up just slightly so you can kind of find that next hole. Make sure that you do keep your stitches close enough together. If you get further, I feel like it's hard to really make the letters as detailed. So the closer your stitches are, the more detailed they will be. So insert through the same loop again. Another thing I want to point out is don't let this twist. So if it's kind of twisting, you just want that to be right through the loop. You don't want a twisted loop at all. That will give you that nice V stitch definition that we're looking for. So I'm going to zoom a bit forward. I'm going to loop around, and then I'm going to show you how to cross over right here. So continuing around. Okay, so you can see here, I'm coming up to the cross between the letters. So I'm going over this piece that I already worked. And just as I have done up until this point, I'm going to go just straight over it. So I'm going to ultimately pretend like that's not even there. So just go through, if you have to go through that lettering at all, that's fine. Just work your way across as though that piece isn't even there. Just go right over it. You can see how it's starting to look a little bit more here, and you can kind of plan out where you want your letter to go each time you're making a new stitch. So I kind of just hold it in the direction that I want it, and then make sure that I'm placing it how I like each time. You might get some little fuzzies, and you can just kind of pull those out. So just continue in this way all the way down. So I finished the F and I'm where I want to be with that last piece. So instead of looping over to do the R, I'm going to start kind of fresh and do a new letter for this, just because I don't want too much bulk right there at the center of the F. So instead of going through the same loop, the same hole, I'm going to go outside of it and just kind of like close up. So you can see this is not the same hole. It's right next to it, and I'm going through just to secure that loop, just like that. And you can kind of play with it, adjust it how you want. But this way, I'm finished with the F. So you can see all done there. And now I want to start a new loop right here, right outside of the F. And then I want to keep going with that R. So I'm inserting my needle just as I've always done, back to front, right there. And then I'm going to pull through. And now I'm going to create a new loop to continue with the R. So I'm inserting into that same hole and pull through to leave a loop, just like that, and kind of use that loop to guide where I want to go. I want to go over this way. I have to kind of get away from the F, so I need to kind of go out a bit. So insert your needle right there and tighten up that loop, just like so, into that same hole. Make a loop just like that. Kind of use that loop as a guide once more through the loop and tighten up. Now the next one. And then through that loop. And just continue up to shape that next letter. Now I'm going to go over and kind of get that little angle on the top of the R. So this is interesting. We haven't kind of done like a sharp turn yet, but it's pretty much easy and just the same thing. You just go off to the side with that next loop. You can definitely make sharp turns with the letters. You just turn that next loop like so. And then you can see we have that angled piece for the R. And then I'm going to go in through that hole again. And now for the next piece, I'm going to go straight down. So you can just kind of point where you're planning on going with that big loop and go through the hole where you want it and continue down. So you can see I'm working along and I'm liking the way that it's looking. I'd say it's shaping up pretty nicely. You can tell that I'm getting a little close to the end on this strand of yarn. So soon, I think I'll try and get a couple more out of this strand, just finish at the top of the D, and then I will show you how to add in a new strand. I honestly just start with one and then I kind of tie it off and weave it in later. There's really not like a huge like super specific way to do it, and it doesn't really matter if there's a knot on the inside of your stocking. I actually don't like the way that one looks, so I'm going to take it out. I feel like I kind of twisted that loop. You could use more yarn so that you didn't have like a longer strand, so that you didn't have to do a new one, but I find that after a while of embroidering with it, I kind of untwists and is a little bit harder to work with. So getting a new strand going is not that big of a deal. So one more loop, hopefully I can get out of it. Yeah, I think I'm going to call that good. So when you feel like you need to start a new strand, just that loop that you would, so normally I would come through with this one, just pull that through and then just leave this strand in the back and leave that loop on the front. And then start with a new strand of yarn. Again, kind of long, not too long that it's hard to work with, but long enough that you won't have to replace often. You can also kind of evaluate where you are at this point and kind of see. So the D, I was aiming to be in the center, and it is. I could have maybe started a little bit further over to the left, but the D-I-E is like really tight. Like the R, it kind of took up a lot of space, but it has a really cute handmade look, which is fun. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't be too critical on yours because it's impossible to get it perfect, and you don't even really want it to be. The fun handmade part is what makes it cool. Every single one is different. So when you have your new strand, just pull through the back to front through that loop and kind of situate it. Leave enough of a tail that you can kind of tie it later. Later we'll tie these together and kind of finish that off. But basically you just start going with the new piece. There's not really that much to it. But definitely hold those strands as you tighten it up, because you need to pull that old strand to tighten that loop, and you could pull this one through since it's not really connected to anything. So just get it to be where you want it, and then just like so. So it was kind of a weird spot to finish, but I really was running low. You could, if you wanted, with the D, this letter's always kind of tough, letters that you are at the top and then have to loop back down, because if I were to go back down, that top of the D would be really thick. And I actually am going to do one more small one to get that D curved enough at the top. Just make it look nice and rounded. It's kind of like part of my handwriting, I guess you could say. Like I never round the top of the letters quite as much as I want to. It's funny what you'll find out about your handwriting, or how you'll notice things with your handwriting and then you'll see it in the stocking as well. It's interesting. So I'm going to do one more, get that D nice and curved how I want. This one kind of is wanting to spin. So again, just untwist it if it's twisting and put it through. Just like so. All right, so now I have that D how I want it, and I'm just going to put that yarn through, not, let's hope my light is good enough here, not through the hole, just next to it. So we're gonna seal off that piece. So again, not through the hole, outside of the hole, just to kind of finish that loop right there. So now we're done with that piece. So we're going to start over here now. Instead of doubling up, so instead of going down, again, I'm just gonna go that way, stop, and then start over here. I'll go a little lower and go down your work from there. Just like that. Kind of cheat a little bit, just so that top of that D isn't too tight or isn't too chunky. So now, starting down here, we're going to make a loop. So you just go back into that same hole, just as we've done the whole time up until this point. So I'm getting a little further, and one thing I want to point out is that the D, just again, for the sake of kind of space, this is a longer name, I'm not looping the D, I'm just going up and then I'm starting again below. So this is kind of like a longer jump between two letters. You can see there, I went up the D and then I started down there. That's a longer jump, so I do just carry the yarn across the back and it works out okay. Another thing, just don't pull it really tight there because then it will pucker. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind. Another thing is that with the D's here, it gets a little trickier because you just want to keep them more even. So it's hard to duplicate the letters exactly. You can see I like the loop of this D better than that D, but I have that part pretty straight and I like the look. And again, you probably wouldn't have noticed that unless I pointed it out. And it's just like I've said, it's an art, not a science. So don't overthink it and it will look great. So this is going to be my last loop on the top of the D, and I'm just going to start or stop at the same point that I stopped with the other one, just to keep them about as even as I can. And then I'm going to just go in, not through the hole, so not losing light quickly, but not through the same hole. I'm going to go outside of the loop just to secure it down. And you can see it kind of like pulls in and it looks pretty seamless. So this is where I was talking. I'm going to start all the way down here now. Down, I'm going to try and find like about the same spot as I did on the other one. Right about, up a little higher maybe. Right about there is where I'm going to start. Actually, it's kind of hard on camera. Yeah, I feel good about that spot. I'm going to start there. So I just pull it across the back and just be careful again not to make it too tight. So I have two more letters left. One is just an I, so I know I have to make the I really close right here. So I'm going to loop up to make the I, and then I'm going to start again down at the bottom of the I, and then I just have the E. So it will fit, but it's getting pretty close, definitely. Okay, so I had to go turn on the light just because it was getting so dark. I'll brighten this as well so you can see. But I'm going to show you how to do the dot of the I. So you can do it after if you want, or you can just do it right now while you're working. So I just finished off that and then I pulled through up where I want the I. And now we're gonna do a French knot. So hold it's a little bit complicated. You can do it a few different ways. This is how I like to do it. So just hold up that strand of yarn and then wrap your needle around it 3 times, like that. And then keep it close to your work. This is kind of the trick to it. So keep that up and keep your needle close. And I just put my thumb over it so that it stays right there. And then pull through and just keep your thumb there. Pull through and tighten up just a bit. So now you can see it's right there close to your work. So now I'm going to pull through to the back of the work, and there is the dot to our I. Really cute, just a nice little dot. So now we just have to finish up. I have one last letter and it's a really easy one, just an E. So I'm going to go down again to the base of the I, find a good spot, and finish it up. It's pretty easy. Okay, so my light is getting so bad, I apologize. But I've just finished up. I like the way it all looks. You can kind of adjust at this point and make sure if you see a little stitch that is maybe too loose or too tight, you can use your needle and kind of adjust the one next to it and just really get the look that you like. But as you can tell, it's pretty easy, and like I love the way this looks. I do wish I would have started a little bit over this way, but I think all in all it looks really cute. So to finish it up, you're going to pull that to the back, and I am going to tie a knot, so just go in through one of those and then just tie one quick little knot, and then don't really pull it that tight though, because it will tighten up the back. And then you can kind of just weave this tail through a few of these stitches that are in the back. You can also kind of just weave it into the knitting itself, because it's double layered. So if you just weave a little bit on the back, you won't really be able to, you'll never be able to tell unless you turn it. And obviously the back, it doesn't look that great anyways. You won't ever see the inside, so it doesn't matter. So just kind of weave in that end a little bit, secure it, and then cut your yarn just like so. Over on these tails here, you can tie them. I'm going to tie them. You don't have to, but I'm just going to tie them just to really secure it. And I didn't leave a whole lot of length, so I'm just going to tie them, cut them, and then call it a day. If I would have left these tails a little longer, I would weave them in, but this is fine. Just tie that in a knot, snip it, and call it good. It's good. And this one as well. So there is one thing that I want to show you. So I do, since I wish I would have started further over this way, I'm going to add just like a couple stitches to the F. So I don't have like a ton of yarn to work with, but I think I'll be able to kind of do it, and I'll show you how this works. So how before we started with in the same hole, so we're just working backwards. So go beyond where that first little stitch is and pull up that loop. And then you want to go, oh my gosh, the lighting is so bad, but you want to go behind both of those bars of that stitch right there, that first stitch, and kind of just go through both of them. And then you're going to loop it back and go through the same hole right there. So just working backwards kind of. So you can see we've already extended it one stitch, and I'm going to do one more and maybe start up so that it's a little loopy, and just closer to the tie. So just go up, probably like right there, and pull through. I have such little yarn to work with. Leave yourself longer tails than I did, just in case you want to mess around with it. Definitely leave yourself longer tails. And then I'm just going to go through this one. This will be my last stitch. Go through that, both bars. So here, I'll get close. You can see both bars of those stitch. Pull it through and then go through that same hole again. We get such bad, such bad lighting in Minnesota in the winter. If you live somewhere in the north, you kind of know what I mean. I guess everywhere kind of has that issue. There, I do like that more. I think it just evens it up a little bit, and it's not perfectly even. It looks better in real life than on the video, I think. So now again, just weave in this tail and call it good. And that is how you do the embroidery.